Okay, shall we start? As I'm keen to follow the
Yes.
timeline today and leave more time for discussion and charts. This was meant to be more focused on workshop kind of mode. And in the last few sessions, we went back to theoreticizing more, philosophizing more. So we'll see what happens today, but I really wanted to show you a few charts. The first one will be Jean's, because hers is such a great example. I want to mention yours, Raven, at some point as well. I know we've seen it before, but I can't miss it. When we get to the Pluto aspects it makes to itself during lifetime, I want to show it there because you are having this opposition right now, and it's it's something we really, I think, need to look at. So Dwayne has a short presentation. Do you, Dwayne?
Yeah.
Is it more personal, or what do you want to start with it maybe, or do I start with mine and then you go after me? How do you want to do it? As I have no idea what you've prepared.
It would be broadly transpersonal.
Okay, in this case, hold on with it. I will give you the word just after the quick browsing through 3 slides, and then we can, have you, and then we can just begin the discussion. Is that a
Great.
good plan? All right. If anyone needs to go early or interrupt and go back, don't worry about it. I know we have a few new people today. So just do whatever you like. Switch on cameras, microphones, and just if you want to share something, don't go too long so that we have time for everything, because we only have 2 hours. Yeah, maybe a bit more, but not too much more. Not as much more as last time. Yeah? Okay. Sharing screen now. Well, following the thread from last time, just first looking at the general keywords for Pluto, and this time it's not really keywords. It's more to do with phrases I selected, and I wanted to keep them as little as possible. This to be shorter than what it was for Neptune, because I wanted to try in the style of Pluto to bring things to an essence. Well, as you can see, I didn't manage very well because it's still a long list. But just wanted to mention these things a bit and explain about them before we delve into the transits of Pluto. And there will be 2 different things we're going to be looking at. The first will be the actual long cycle of Pluto, traveling through the different signs of the zodiac, taking the longest time a planet takes among those planets that we already know about in the solar system. And we would see the different generations of Pluto and the years when they lasted. You can see which one you belong to if you don't know already. And also the cycle of Pluto, which is to do with it making aspects to itself in the birth chart. So wherever you have your Pluto in your chart, over the course of time, it will move forward by transit, and it will make a few aspects, but not as many, because it's very slow. And during one normal lifetime, it will only create several angles that we consider significant. Maybe in this case, we need to go further down into splitting into smaller aspects and seeing things like semi-sextile or semi-square or things like that. But I don't know. For now, because we don't have a lot of time today, I have just listed the ones that are the major ones. And finally, the individual cycle of Pluto, which is the planet transiting again, but then when doing this, touching sensitive points in the chart. And usually it's just one quadrant of the chart. Maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, depends how long you live. But it's so concentrated on specific areas of life. It's almost fateful, I've discovered, when I looked at mine, for example, starting from just below the descendant and now being close to the MC, how it's only going to be a certain particular area of the chart that Pluto is going to touch as a conjunction during lifetime, and other areas not at all. So I won't be speaking too much today about aspects of Pluto to planets, even though that may be part of it too, a big part of it actually. But the information is so vast. I mean, we cannot cover every single aspect. There are brilliant books out there you can look at. Some of my favorites are The Book of Pluto by Stephen Forrest. Maybe you know that one. And he goes through in detail every aspect, every generation, every aspect of Pluto to itself. And it's a very well-written, interesting book, not very difficult as well to follow. And I don't know if you've come across. Well, I need to stand up and take it later and show it to you because I forgot exactly how it's called. But there is another Pluto dedicated book I was looking at this week. It's called Hayden Paul, the author. Have you heard of him? No, no problem. I'll show that to you later. But it's just away, and I need to pick it up later. And we have a moment during the break, maybe, as we may make a short break at some point. So here, the keywords for Pluto. These are just my selection. I know it's a lot more. Feel free to add things here, or like Lauren did last time, you can ask, why have you included this here and what does it make sense to you at all? Compulsive desires of any kind. Maybe we can say that they have a social source in one way or another, because Pluto is a society generational planet, one that, yes, we can experience personally, but not in every chart it's equally active. It all depends on how you've got your own Pluto positioned and other Plutonian factors like planets in Scorpio, things in the 8th house, all sorts of things like this play into the picture of how strongly you would be able to connect with Pluto. And of course, it's also down to your own willing participation with Plutonian lessons. So here it's not that much keywords as lessons, I think we are talking about, because that's why Pluto is so feared, so misunderstood as well, I think, because it does bring hard times, extreme hard times where change is inevitable. And when, I mean, we cannot, of course, say that Pluto is directly causing those changes that every now and then we need to go to and totally transform our circumstances in some area of life. But it does coincide with its cycle and its way of interacting with our charts. So we can deny that there is a connection. There is obviously a connection. This is the most recently discovered planet in 1930, and we don't know that much about it yet. So I would avoid making big conclusions about what exactly it means for us and how we understand it, because we don't yet, and maybe we wouldn't for quite some time. As I share what I suppose also Dwayne will touch on later, that these transpersonal planets, they are inviting us into another realm, a foreign realm, one beyond, let's say, the solar system inner circle of Saturn. And this is still unknown territory for society and for individuals. And yes, even those people that are born more Plutonian, even they still struggle on making sense of what kinds of lessons we're meant to extract from the cycles of this planet. It is my favorite planet, my personal, how is it called, single dispositor of the chart, as I've got so much in Scorpio going on, including Pluto in Scorpio. And I love it. I sympathize with the lessons. I know that they haven't really hit me hard yet. I'm still very young. So I'm sure that later in life I may change my mind and be in situations when I literally struggle to survive whatever Pluto is bringing. But this is what it's known for. Those total, not just intense experiences and compulsive desires, wishes, and forces that almost like act on us from the outside, and we don't have an explanation where this is coming from. They also tend to be universal. Those things that make us human, those problems and desires that make us all human and weak every now and then when we can't consciously control our actions. But over the course of time, obviously this is to do with change that is bringing something of a good, but it's so hard to understand why and how at the moment when it's happening. And when Plutonian things are happening. They're happening over the course of a long time, a big period of time, as the transits of Pluto hit us gradually. It's a slow planet. So when you have, for example, Pluto conjunct your sun, but that's not something that everybody will experience, just some of us. If you have that, for example, this is going to approach for some time. Currently, Pluto is at the end of Capricorn. I have my, well, I was trying to make an example with conjunction, but same thing with opposition, squares, and whatever. End of Capricorn, beginning of Aquarius is approaching. So Pluto is about to enter Aquarius. And I have, for example, Sun in the first degree of Scorpio, which means that after a couple of years, when Pluto moves to Aquarius, it's going to be squaring my Sun. If you have Sun in Aquarius, right at the start of the sign, then you're going to experience a conjunction. If you have it in Leo, it's going to be an opposition. If you have it in Taurus, another square. So that's how it works very, very generally. I know most of you know all this, but just to mention. And that's starting from, I think, approximately 10 degrees orb. So that's arguable. That's my way. I give it a big orb for the transits of Pluto because I feel like it is a very powerful force, one that really could be felt from a distance, from a long time before it is really exact. So you let me know later. Is it the same experience you've had? But I do clearly remember to the day, and I wasn't following it, but checked after the fact, when Pluto came into 10-degree orb with my Sun, and there was a noticeable, I mean, yes, that's intuitive, but noticeable difference, noticeable event even on that date, which made me look at the ephemeris and look at my chart and see what is going on today. Why is it so intense, and why is it so unusually intense? So, and of course, we're talking about Sun in Scorpio, so that may add to it as well. Back to the list.
Can I just ask something, Radilina,
yeah,
very quickly, because you just mentioned that Pluto coming into 10 degrees of a personal planet, is that right? Is that,
yes, for example, yeah.
Would that be kind of when you kind of look for it in the chart, and that it starts to kind of make an impression on your psyche?
Yeah, I think ultimately we come to the fact that Pluto wants to point us towards some sort of change that we need to willingly initiate. That needs to be radical, needs to be cardinal. And one of those things that we probably voluntarily never do, because it will disturb too much our comfort or status quo, whatever we're doing and living through. And this is to do with change designed to strip off everything that we have been accumulating over a long period of time, and to the point that it had become toxic in one way or another. A profession, a relationship, a habit, whatever you can think of. It could be anything, but anything that almost like over the course of life, we are accumulating residue of some sort, like pipes in a radiator get clogged over time. We also get clogged with something, complexes, problems, unresolved issues. Usually it's to do with closing your eyes about it at the same time, whatever that is. And Plutonian transits are there to break through that mold and force us to change if we don't do it voluntarily. So how do we do it voluntarily? With the help of astrology, I think we can start following a transit of Pluto from that approximate 10-degree orb, when I expect certain signs to start appearing that are almost like indications. Nothing has yet happened or doesn't necessarily have to happen, but there will be indications that in the area of life where this planet, where Pluto is aspecting, if it's not a conjunction, so we're looking at a particular house where both of them are, but if it's, say, a square, then the two houses where the square happens to, we need to investigate and see what we may be able to do voluntarily to change things there, or to face ourselves, face some sort of truth, as I've said here in the list. And of course, most of the time that doesn't happen. we miss it. We miss the opportunity. Someone or something needs to point it in that direction, and you need to be really motivated and really focused in order to do that. Most of the time, it doesn't happen like this. Hopefully, in the future, when people have more statistical knowledge of Pluto and have experienced Pluto more over, longer, then they would be able to design those approaches toward it. Nowadays, we're still babies in terms of the Pluto realm. So that's at least how I see it. And then when the orb becomes more and more exact of the aspect, we are expecting that we would have now inevitable circumstances changing, which could be a breakthrough, like with Uranus. It could be something that, because we've prepared and we've had the time to prepare, the orb is large and it takes time to come, then maybe it will be easier to go through all this, and we would be actually very happy with the result and not feeling like we have been stripped naked and kind of deprived of something for forever, which can never come back. And thinking about this, like for example, in my case, I'm thinking this square is approaching between my Sun and Pluto. I belong to one of those generations where Pluto is moving very fast, and obviously at a very young age, I would get the square, and I would also get it at the same time when Pluto is on the MC in the chart. And it's a square between the 6th house and the 10th house, all related to work, to exposure, to working with the world, being out there, contributing something. And I don't know what to do with this apart from just preparing, like learning, studying, experimenting, doing a bit of it. But if everything runs according to what the chart prescribes, it is very likely that when Pluto really joins the Sun and makes the square, there will be enormous challenges that I would need to face in that department. And if I'm not ready, it will be a disaster of some sort. So nothing to really fear, but the reason why we fear Pluto is maybe because we fear change, and we fear this need for preparation over a long period of time to change things around us. We simply don't want to do that. I don't want to do that too. And inertia is the greatest enemy of Pluto, basically. And that's how it gets those sometimes tragic results, as if we're really persistent and stubborn and don't want to move even a little bit in another direction. That's when we hit the hardest by Pluto, as it just occurs as an event, usually around the time the orb is exact, which decides the matter for us. We have no choice. And then afterwards, continuing forward, it's not over yet, I think. It takes another 10 degrees of getting away from the aspect, the separating aspect from Pluto, which is to maybe make sense of what happened and not become totally depressed and give up because of the tragedy or hardship, whatever we experienced, but somehow integrate it and understand it. So that's roughly how I work with not just the Pluto transits, but all the trans-Saturnian planets aspects. With Saturn, it's more literal. You really are more guided along the way because it's a material, physical, earthly planet that every step of the way, and it's moving so much faster, it gives you easier indications. It's everyday things that go wrong and need to be fixed, and you just get along with the task. Well, with Pluto, it's so much more subtle. It's not so easy to understand what Pluto wants from us, as it needs a bit more of a psychological, philosophical approach to be thinking deeper about it, to be looking. So at the end of the list, I've got something to do with perceiving life's undercurrents. And it's not just undercurrents, but also being able to see the bigger picture, not just what lies underneath the appearances, but also what's like from a distance, observing from a distance, so that we grasp something which is not an everyday easy thing to perceive. And that's why probably still we're not at that evolutionary stage to work well with Pluto. And not everybody can do it. And maybe very, very few people can do it. And I think it's a very important task for anyone Plutonian, however disturbed that person may be, because usually Plutonian people are very disturbed, to somehow give a helping hand in these several generations that Pluto is fast moving to Scorpio and so on, about showing others that are not so Plutonian what this may be, as this could be reached intuitively by Plutonian people, I think, and even without always understanding it well.
And
Maybe, yes, Simona.
yeah, I just wanted to say, because you mentioned that you're coming up to your Pluto square. My daughter, who is a few years older than you, actually is in the middle of her Pluto,
Mm-hmm.
and it's 10th house, 7th house. And
Oh,
I think what I have found is in relation to the difference maybe between Pluto and Saturn, and especially when you get it at such a young age, you know, when you are not yet kind of whatever, is that, you know, the Pluto goes on for a very long time.
yes, that's correct.
You know,
Simona,
it goes on for
we are
years.
actually going to see this in more detail in the next slide,
Yeah.
because there we have the generations laid out, and a couple of the examples are from the same generation that your daughter is, with the same Pluto square going on. Maybe we can ask those people to share experiences and compare with what she's going through.
Yeah.
But yeah, you are totally right about this. It's unprecedented.
And that makes it much more difficult, because it's such a long period compared to 2.5 years of Saturn going through a sign or whatever, you know.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to mention that. So I'm totally sympathetic towards it in terms of the younger generations.
Yes, maybe that's what this is all about, that the younger generations are now living actively to a period of time when whatever Pluto stands for is getting more important.
Yeah.
And we need to concentrate more on this. So that's why we have this moment. Pluto governs the large cycles of history, and it always gives us those circumstantial effects, like, for example, what happens in these particular generations, in order to bring about the global change, the large scale change that also we as a society, as a species, maybe even, need to go through now at that moment. So immensely interesting, this planet, because it's so two-dimensional. It could be extremely personal while being extremely impersonal at the same time, and these two mix together all the time. So yeah, let's continue, because I'm cautious of the time, so I give you more time for examples and charts and so on, as you have a lot of interesting things going on in your charts. Just a few things I wanted to also mention here about what we connect with Pluto. It's this dedication to something, especially if you're very Plutonian, especially if you have Sun in a relationship with Pluto. Your Sun doesn't need to be in Scorpio, it could be in some other relationship with Pluto. The life purpose should be so concentrated into something that normally people that have this aspect are almost obsessed by whatever they're doing, or it is extremely important for them to find something they can totally dedicate themselves to. And one clue of what that can be is the house where Pluto is in the chart. So whatever that area of life is about, it's a very broad options there presented, so nothing specific, but Pluto in whatever house means that this is where you can potentially make the greatest contribution to the big picture, to your generation, to your moment of time when you were born. And it's of course not only that, but this is a good clue, I think, and it works most of the time. And yeah, it is mixed up with this typical Scorpionic Plutonian fixation. It's a fixed energy on something, regardless. Just that becomes the most important thing. This has a dark side, of course, and we need to be careful, isn't it, Sam? You were laughing a little bit, I can see. Um, You are another Scorpio, so that's why I'm picking
Yeah,
up on you.
similar to you. I like Pluto. I like the things it uncovers. I like the depths that it can actually dig through. So it's when people go, "Oh my God, it's Pluto!" It's like, yeah, that's fun. I like
That's
it.
one of the
I
most.
see it as growth. I see it as a way of making more of yourself.
Absolutely. I think that's what that's all about at the end of the day. All these transformations, changes, they're not just for the sake of making our life harder, just like that. It's to reach a higher level of, I mean, this sounds a bit too, I don't know, high level of consciousness. It's a bit too metaphysical, but I mean, become more than what you already are, not stop your development in some way.
It's bizarre, even though I like Pluto and the things everyone talks about it, this is the first time I've actually looked at it in relation to me, the transits in my chart.
Mm-hmm.
I normally would rather look at other people rather than myself.
Yeah.
And
I'm
just noticing a few things, like I had transiting Pluto going over my natal Mars at exactly the same point that I got separated
Mm-hmm.
from my ex, and I'm another of the Pluto squares.
Yeah.
So,
Well, exactly like you, I, as a exception, looked at what was the position. I mean, what were the dates? And Solar Fire can help you calculate that very easily. What were the dates when Pluto was crossing house cusps since birth? So it's not going to be a lot of times that happens because Pluto is slow, and maybe you had it 2-3 times if you're younger. If you're older, maybe 4 times, something like this. When Pluto traveling in the sky was crossing the cusps of your houses and basically entering a new area of your life. And I was amazed by, I mean, I've been doing astrology for some time now, and there to invite you here to teach you stuff and so on. And still I hadn't checked my Pluto transits up to last week. And every major change that was in one way or another caused by external circumstances. Yes, I cooperated with it, but it was more fateful in a way, fateful changes. They coincided to the exact month, not just the year, of when Pluto was crossing the cusps of the houses. So, for example, I have Pluto in the 6th. I was very young, a child, when it crossed the 7th, so nothing there really, unless I haven't dug much to figure out what this may be. Maybe there was, but it wasn't that significant because when it happens at such a young age, maybe it's not so crucial. Actually, depends. Maybe if you have planets there, it will be crucial. But anyway, then there comes a time when it crosses between the 7th and the 8th. And that's when I left my home country. I moved abroad and have been living abroad and lots of other things, typically 8th house things. My life was like having my own business, cooperating with others, being very immersed in a relationship, 8th house topics all the time during this period. And when I discovered astrology and started studying it, was the month when Pluto crossed from the 8th to the 9th house. And you all know what the 9th house is related to. In 2 years, it will be on the cusp of the 10th house and making that square. So I consider this 9th house several years as a time of preparation, of studying, of learning, of experimenting, juggling with ideas, seeing whether whatever I've been believing in really holds true, questioning all these things. And I don't need to know about this for that to be almost like scheduled and running on the background and happening. And I think that this is the case with everyone. And what we can see is that this particular, well, I'm jumping ahead. This is the further, but let me show you actually, because it will make more sense to you. This was the last slide of 3, where we have the quarters of the chart and how maybe the most important Pluto transit you're ever going to have in your life is the one when Pluto crosses one of your angles. Some people will have it cross 2 of their angles, but most of the time it's just one. So
I've just worked mine out. My Pluto will cross my DC August next year.
wow. Well, that could be something, definitely. But let's not think of this as an external event only. That's why I often get annoyed with information online and people generally, I mean, speaking about transits, and because the instinct is always to Pluto is coming or whatever else is coming, and it's going to cause something. Almost like an external force comes and hits me. And I have nothing to do with it. It just comes and challenges me. All I need to do is just respond. Well, no, I think we actually are part of the process. It is our Pluto. We are that Pluto. That's initially in our chart, along with everything else. And it's not an external force. It's just lined up timing with the universe. The universe is set as a clock. Our life is also set as a clock. And when they reach a certain moment, when they coincide, then we need to synchronize ourselves with the bigger picture. If we fail, we're going to suffer. I think it's as simple as that. So, yeah, Pluto is not just pain. Pluto is an opportunity as well. Maybe the biggest opportunity we have in our life, and the easiest to miss, because when it hits you and makes you suffer, then you're not really willing to listen to it anymore, isn't it? You're not willing to do anything in that regard. You rather, most likely, to say, well, I need to just recover, and I'm giving up. It doesn't matter anymore. I don't want to continue, and it's a downward spiral from there. So surviving a Pluto transit is a big deal because it's a challenge to our own will and our own understanding. Anyway, I already got too philosophical, but yeah, these are the things that I think roughly we can expect when Pluto is crossing the angles. But it's not just the angles with Pluto, I think. With Uranus, maybe we can slightly disregard when Uranus crosses the intermediary house cusps, let alone that it's very hard to determine them, where they are exactly, because everybody uses a different house system, and you know how it goes with this. But with Pluto, I think every single house cusp transition is eventful, or at least it's a marked transition of circumstances in life now focusing in another area from that moment onwards. So it really works. And I have checked other people around me, close people, and their situation, their dates, and it is very surprisingly accurate. Almost like it sends a message what your life is to be dedicated to circumstantially. Houses, yeah, circumstances. Want it or not, you would be involved in those happenings, this kind of happenings. So from the moment my Pluto reaches the MC, I know that probably until the rest of my life, it will be the last quarter, the fourth quarter, which is very social, very impersonal, very dedicated to the outside world. It's not that much about personal world. Not that I'm not going to have a personal life in the meantime, but that's obviously not going to be the focus. And this is what is prescribed for me. In your case, this is one of those 4 quarters usually that Pluto activates during the course of life. And it's very interesting that almost like it distinguishes our place and says, you are going to deal with this. Other people are going to deal with something else, mostly. Anyway, ascendant. Crossing the ascendant, that's probably the most feared. And the most feared in terms of people being scared that they can physically die when Pluto crosses their ascendant. I don't think that's always the case, obviously. Don't think of it this way as very fatalistic, and thoughts like this can cause the event more than Pluto. So it's a total transformation, rediscovering yourself, an identity crisis, big time in one way or another. And if we willingly do the transformation, maybe no problem at all with it. But Pluto and Scorpio most of the time assume totally leaving behind the past. Maybe that's where the phoenix symbol comes from.
Yeah.
This the past has to have been destroyed, cleared away, thrown away, not kept, in order for the new to have the ground to develop itself. If we have too much of the old, it's going to prevent the process from happening. So it's a cleansing kind of situation. And here it's about the identity of the person, who you are and what you're about, what you're attracted to, how you want to define yourself, how you want to put yourself out there, and also how you want to personally get involved with society. So where your personality fits in the picture as an instinct, as an impulse. Nothing is really formed yet on the ascendant. it's more formed on the IC. So the real stable identity is supposed to be more clear to us on the IC. So if Pluto is concentrating there, then we would need to find true ground. Here it's about what is it really that I believe in, but not believe in terms of ninth house stuff. It's more, where do I belong, maybe is a better way to say it. Where do I belong? What are my things in life? How I draw a circle around myself. And is that really my thing in that circle? Or is it imposed from family, from somebody else, from society? Things like this. So clarifying also what you stand for, what are your principles, who you are basically, and being prepared to defend that if it's attacked. In the ascendant, it's more about expressing yourself. In the IC, it's more about grounding yourself and establishing yourself. Then the descendant, transformation of relationships of any kind, that goes without saying. Challenges from there, friends, enemies, situations around this, having to adjust, having to change our attitude. But also, it's to do with maybe for the first time waking up for the fact that we have some sort of social responsibility. Because with Libra or the seventh house, the descendant area, we start this journey of now connecting with the bigger world and not just being concerned about ourselves, but now caring about contributing something and finding allies, eliminating the enemies that are standing on our path of doing whatever we want to do, but also finding people we can cooperate with, giving a handout. So yeah, that's it, just very briefly. And then the MC, obviously something to do with work, but not just work is going to work every day and doing a repetitive thing, but it needs to have a clear purpose, a clear role in society. And maybe a challenge is expected here when Pluto crosses the MC of them against you or something like this, as often people need to defend their beliefs, defend their work, or they need to promote it in one way or another. If they are working for something that they really care about, and they may need to find a way to get it across to the outer world and be in the public eye, want it or not. So yeah, that's what's expected to change. Maybe it will be a big success. Maybe the person will emerge from the underworld and out there and seen and recognized and so on, or maybe the other way around. If there has been abuse of power, typical Plutonian topic for the 10th house, or greed, or mishandling of resources, of people, of whatever, then this could be the moment when you are brought to justice in a way, that you are made to pay for what you've done in some way. This can happen in the 7th house transit too, if you have been doing this privately, one-to-one, but here it's to do with your social involvement. So yeah, that was supposed to be the individual cycle of Pluto, how it goes for us individually in life. With every case, it's different. So it's very interesting if you want to explore it more and make a list of your moments when it crossed the different, and when it is about to do that, as it can give some preparation, consolation for future things as well that come. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you was this one here, the Pluto generations. So last time with Neptune we had the same, but here you see first, not only they take longer, most of them, because Pluto is slower than Neptune, but I also added how many years it took for each case, just to give you this idea of starting from the end of the the end of the 19th century, actually, with Pluto in Gemini. Pluto stayed in Gemini for a very long time, almost 30 years, between 1884 and 1914. And then from there, because it's the slowest in Taurus and Gemini, from there, it started getting faster and faster and faster. And you can see how every next generation takes less years of Pluto in that sign. And we are now in the Pluto in Capricorn era, still almost at the end of it. In 2 years, it is about to go to Aquarius. And it's 16 years, which is something in the middle. It is very similar to Neptune. and so exemplary of this Neptune and Pluto coming together. Because when Pluto is in Scorpio, that was between 1984 and 1995, the fastest period of only 11 years, that's when it crossed the orbit of Neptune and came closer to the Sun than Neptune. They switched places for a while. I don't know exactly the dates, but this is roughly every time in its 248-year cycle. When Pluto is in Scorpio, it does this. It goes closer to the Sun. So almost like Dane Rogers says, impregnating the universe, the solar system with some sort of cosmic external force into the realm inside Neptune. And then after some time, it goes out again. So Pluto's orbit is very unusual, like the planet is unusual. It's elliptical, while all the others are not as elliptical as this one. And so basically, we have in those several generations between, maybe we can say between Pluto in Leo, the baby boomers, a lot of you are in this one, and Pluto in Sagittarius and now Capricorn, this period, we have Neptune and Pluto traveling almost at the same speed. So they are like allies. One moves a little bit forward, the other one moves the same. And they are constantly in this sextile aspect together, which is also another unique thing for the times we live in. I won't go into this too much because we've mentioned it before, but just to say, and you see how it peaked in Scorpio and now it's getting slower and slower and slower again. And next time when it's in Aquarius, it's going to take 18 years, then in Pisces 24 years, and so on. So I have no hope of reaching the Pisces generation in my lifetime, but who knows, maybe they would increase the lifespan of everyone on the planet by then, who knows. But I mean, that's not what matters. I think we can just see that it is a force of change that cannot be pinned down very easily. We can say that many years in Scorpio, that many years, and for every generation we have a unique Pluto situation. And maybe that's why history is getting shaped by that planet, because it's got its moments of peak and moments of retraction. At the moment, it's 24 degrees, 22 minutes, Capricorn. So if you have something around there, or the other 3 cardinal signs, at the end of the cardinal signs, Libra, Aries, and Cancer. So that's when we now look at charts, we would see what's going on there and whether Pluto is hitting something. Finally, the different aspects it makes to itself. This is so disregarded by astrologers most of the time. And maybe that's the most important thing, because if you have in front of you someone that you look at the chart and you realize that they are going through one of those, actually 2 aspects, because the other 2 are extremely rare and maybe we'll never get across to see them as examples. But the Pluto sextile and Pluto square is something that most of us would go through. Because of what we already said on the differences of how long it takes to travel through signs in the different generations, we see that we don't know exactly when the sextile is going to be. But nowadays, in our generations, it's approximately around the 30s. So it coincides with the Saturn return moment. And it is supposed to be an opportunity, Plutonian opportunity, because sextiles is, aspect which is connected to that, to a burst of energy, some sort of inspiration, doors opening to what I can possibly do with my life, which is very personal, very dedicated, very unique for me, emerging from the Saturnian social frame of reference up to the 30s, and together with all the other transits happening around the 30s, Pluto also gets into the picture with this sextile, and it's an opportunity to discover something around that period that you may end up dedicating your whole life to afterwards. And again, not everybody grabs the opportunity or sees it in the first place or whatever, But something to watch out for, as the idea is that everyone is given that in one way or another, some sort of sign, some sort of indication. Maybe a dream, a long forgotten dream is somehow rekindled, or someone offers you, a chance to go in that direction, and you may say, oh no, I would rather stick with my secure, current state, and just don't do it. But maybe if we do it, this is going to then pave the way for the other transits of Pluto later, especially the square, when we really, it's a very, very different effect with the square. Pluto square Pluto, I see a lot now in people in their 40s. So those born around the 70s and 80s, they have it around the 40s, coinciding with the midlife crisis and the Uranus opposition. And on top of that, they have Pluto square Pluto, which is a once in a lifetime, hardest possible aspect you can ever get from a transpersonal planet. So you see the picture. The problem with that is that if we haven't self-identified, say, in some way with the sextile and the previous periods, when this one comes, the square, it's a challenge to your beliefs, to your social beliefs more than anything else. Like Pluto stands for the big picture in which we are all part of, and how we participate there. Most of the time, we experience disillusionment when we have, like with Neptune, it's this constant game of being under some sort of illusion and dream, and maybe false belief or false, I don't know, maybe we trust too much in something, in institutions, in people, in society, in religion, whatever. And when Pluto squares Pluto, a moment of truth comes. We are having this thing that we were so wrong about, whatever it is, exposed in front of our eyes. And we may close our eyes and say, I don't want to see that. I want to pretend I didn't see that. And from then on, it becomes living in a lie or not. So it's a very crucial square, this one. People in the previous generations experienced it when they were older. And we are going to experience it when we are younger now. And later, it's still going to come. So we have this situation, very young people going through a transformation which maybe they're not even mature enough for yet. They don't have ideas or beliefs or whatever so settled yet to then transform them. Or maybe I'm wrong, maybe they do, because life has been happening so much faster in our generations that we have accumulated that in a faster pace. So Pluto comes earlier to help us deal with it. This is just a suggestion. And then we have another possible transiting aspect Pluto can make to itself, the trine. And also it's actually quite common because nowadays people have it in their 50s, 60s, around that area of time. And it's a trine supposedly inviting for making friends with Pluto. And I don't know, I guess the way to make friends with Pluto is to make friends with the topics that Pluto stands for. One of the greatest ones is mortality and our total relationship with that, and wisdom, real wisdom, which is grounded on experience, not just on being naturally smart or naturally observant or something like that. But you see, you can get that transit until you're older. So it is an invitation to start sharing wisdom, and first, before you do that, realizing what's the wisdom behind your experiences that you have already lived through that weren't very easy. And Stephen Forrest is describing it as a 3-step process where you go at a gate where some monster lives. First, you need to make friends with the monster, which is some sort of problem with you. That's the monster. Something which you need to realize you've been wrong about or whatever. And your dark side, if we want to use this cliche. So if you make friends with that, accept it, but see it for what it is, then a treasure lies behind the gate, he says. So you make friends, they let you in. And then the third step is whether you want to claim the treasure or not. Because you can be in there, but still not claim the treasure. Yeah, still leave it there, which means, yes, you've made your realizations, you've made peace with yourself, you've done the first hard steps, but then you don't go any further, you don't help others, you don't share, and so on. So I guess that's what this trine is all about. And I know it's relevant to a lot of you here, this particular trine. And I can see how some of you have definitely done a very good job with this a bit earlier or now. And we are now seeing the results of the shared wisdom. Finally, Pluto opposite Pluto. I haven't said anything here because I have no clue, and hardly anyone has any clue, because we are just about to start getting people living through that aspect. As in the past, when Pluto was, again, very fast, in say 200 years ago or something, we had it too, but people didn't used to live that long at the time, and you need to have lived up to 80s, 90s to experience that. And Raven, any comment from you about this? Because you are about to reach this.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'll just let you go on for a while
Mm-hmm.
if you don't
Of course,
mind.
think about it. And I'm going to
Yeah.
show another chart first now, and then maybe later we can see yours and you can comment then.
Yeah,
Because
that'd be better. Yeah.
Sure, sure. All right. So now I stop this share. Do you guys have any comments or questions so far before we move on to Dwayne's presentation? Sorry, I just wanted to stop it. And then we'll do the charts.
I have a quick comment. Just I realized perhaps that when Pluto crossed my descendant was when I died as a child, or twice, I think. So anyway, that was, and well, I'd have to get the exact dates, but I don't even think I have the medical dates.
Right, something of a homework for all of us to do the dates. They're not that many, that's why it's possible to just write them down and see what happens. And do you really feel like it was a transition to something new that then lasted as long as the next house didn't, and so on? Okay, well,
Oh,
yes, Robin.
hey there.
Hey.
No, I was just going to say it's very interesting. I'm soaking it all in. It's an interesting experience to be learning something as you're experiencing it, as opposed to, I guess, in hindsight. So I'm trying to balance that right now. I'm someone with Pluto in my first house, so it's Plutonian themes are very important to me. And also I'm in my Pluto square currently. In fact, the full moon yesterday was crossing, the sun is crossing my Pluto. So that's everything kind of coming to light and being activated. Yes. For me, the way this is playing out in terms of the deconditioning is somewhat of a divorce, you could say, but it's a divorce from family, because the square is happening between the first house and the fourth house. And so again, I see what's happening. I'm aware of what's happening, and I have my intellectual perspective to be able to wrap my mind around. The universe is kind of showing me where my values no longer align with the values of my family. But being able to process something intellectually and being able to process it emotionally aren't exactly the same thing. So I don't know. I wish I knew a more concrete, or what's the word, standardized way of reaching out to people who are experiencing the same square right now, but who don't even have an idea that that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah. But also the difficult thing is that it's so individual depending on the chart, and it's so difficult to just get into a club of some sort, the Pluto square Pluto club. There'll be certain things the same among you, but also it's very easy to start jumping into conclusions. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is that Pluto maybe needs to be experienced alone in a way. Not totally alone, but of course you read, you get help, you have conversation, whatever. But rather than looking for, as you said, Robin, standardized ways of kind of making sense of this while it's happening, to let it pass first. Because remember that third stage, the orb after the fact. I don't know where you are at the moment. I think you're more towards the exactness of the aspect. So maybe when this finishes gradually over the course of the next few years, you're going to naturally start making sense of it, because it simply takes time and it takes an internal process, not an external discussion that much. But of course, tips can be received. What we are risking if we make a group of Pluto square Pluto people, one person saying, oh, I've been through this, I've been feeling that way. And then the other one says, well, maybe that's why I'm feeling that way too. Well, maybe that's not why they're feeling like that way too. Maybe their case is pointing to something else. So I guess the best advice that I would personally give someone going to a Pluto transit is see a very good astrologer who would look at your chart, concentrate on your case, and have a conversation with them. See what you can discover. Yes, Laura?
I'd like to comment. I mean, I'm in the United States, but I think it's very fascinating that so many people in Congress are like in their 80s or early 80s, who's probably coming to that Pluto opposing Pluto. Yeah. Like my father, and he and I have been on the outs. My Pluto is just finishing the fourth house, but his Pluto is opposing that Capricorn energy and what's been going on. And will they have a change of heart? I just wonder, because of where Congress is going.
Possibly. Well, you're giving a very concrete example from life, which is fine, but I guess any sort of transformation this way could happen with the opposition, because it's the greatest tension you have, being pulled in the opposite direction to what you already know. So I suppose it will be really hard with the opposition when you have been extremely stubborn with your views up to that point, and you've been extremely one-sided and didn't want to hear about anything else apart from your narrow opinions. Otherwise, it could be a lot more spiritual. If you're not like that, it could be a spiritual transformation where you are having maybe a different realization about what comes after death or things like this, totally different side of Pluto, not the power side. I just wanted to very quickly go back to what Robin said on it's probably better to experience and then make conclusions than just analyze with the information. You are saying the same thing as Stephen Forrest in his book, where he said that when he laid out his aspects of the big planets for the future, when he was a young guy, he realized that he needs to, maybe he won't be alive until he reaches the point when he's qualified enough to speak about all of them, all of the aspects and all of the things, all the transits. Before that, naturally, some of them, when we say Saturn return, most of us know what that's all about, not just in theory, but in practice. Well, this thing with Pluto, especially the Pluto opposite Pluto, that's why it's such an enigma, as we don't know. And it may be a lot more generational than we suspect. It could be like the fate of a lot of people together, having to go through something together, which is going to change them. Maybe it's going to be external. Maybe it's to do with the state of, things getting destroyed now to be reborn later. And the peak of that destruction could be when a lot of people reach that moment together.
Yeah.
So,
well, we just had the pandemic too, and all the death.
It counts, doesn't it? It counts a lot. And it's opposition to when? If you think about it, Pluto in Capricorn is opposition to Pluto in Cancer. And we had Pluto discovered when it was in Cancer. And we had the 2 world wars when Pluto was in Cancer. So we can see how these are not totally unrelated. Actually, if we go that way and explore history with Plutonian generations, we can find amazing things. very, very, I mean, lots of synchronicities, lots of things. So that's another reason why this was expected, isn't it? I mean, those of you that are astrologers and you knew about Pluto several years ago, you knew that when this year comes, 2020, we're in for something, but we didn't know what that's going to be. There is no way we can predict what that's going to be, but we definitely knew that the time would have come for something big to turn
I
around.
think Biden is Scorpio also, and probably having something like that, because I believe he was born the same year I was, or only 1 year difference.
Yes,
Which
well,
is interesting too. And what you were saying about how we can all be affected, that would be very large.
yes, well, for people like him, public figures and so on, I guess through Pluto, they become simply instrumental to something due to their own energies. Not that much that they caused it, but they are in the right place at the right time when they need it for the actual change to
Yes.
be moved forward. Someone with the same charts, similar character, would have been kind of useless in a way, kind of thing in another era, because it doesn't correspond to the change of the big picture. So having a prominent Pluto today in your chart, well, in any time maybe, but having it prominent is a bit of a responsibility if you think about it, because you know that if you don't step out and do something, then you would be attacked, and the world will want you to do something. They would make you a hero in a play when maybe you don't want to willingly participate. So that's another reason why Pluto is so dangerous, could be dangerous. And if you're lucky and you're not so Plutonian, then you can maybe live a more peaceful life. But we can see with the dates that it's not meant to be a peaceful time for anyone right now, isn't it? So I suggest, in order to break this talking all the time, give Dwayne the word, but do you want to now make a quick 2 to 5 minutes break, just quickly? And then when we come back, Dwayne, you can share your screen and we can see what you've got for us. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
See you in a minute. Okay, I'm back. Are you?
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Dwayne, whenever you're ready, let's see if I need to give you permission for the share.
Yes.
I guess I do because of the new way this works. Okay, ready. Now you can do it.
Okay. Okay, I think that's ready to go. Thank you once again, Radlina, for your willingness to collaborate in the way that we do here. It's just really an awesome encounter, and I look forward to it every 2 weeks now. And it's really been an opportunity for me to bring myself forward. I've been a student of Dane Rudyard since 1972. And I realized that I have a lot of experience of his material that most people don't. And so from time to time, I'm inspired to bring these presentations together just to try and bring in some of his more philosophical considerations, because I think it helps us see the context of the astrology that we're engaged in. So, well, let's go. And okay. You know, I've yet to figure out how to change
that usual problem. Is the cursor disappearing?
The cursor disappearing again.
It is on my side. I can move it. I wonder if that's got anything to do with it.
because I'm going to need to read some text, and once again, everybody's picture is in the way.
You can try, and if there is a problem, you can ask me to read it, for example.
Okay. Let's just march on. So just Pluto in my own chart, I have an exact Sun-Pluto opposition. And years ago, Rudyard himself looked at my chart and pinpointed this as being the very central axis of the whole chart. And so I've had to deal with that in my life. What's this all about, having a Sun-Pluto opposition? It's kind of resolved as I've got a train going down a track, and it's one to keep me moving. Just kind of a steady, transformative journey that this life has been. Rudyard refers to two principles here, the principle of solar centrality versus the principle of galacticity. So as we move ahead, I think you'll get a better sense of what he's referring to here. Okay, Radlina, I can't see the whole of this, so if you
No problem. So this is a quote by Rudyard, and it says, Pluto rules over the path of initiation with absolute rigor and in terms of unvarying and impersonal laws embodying cosmic principles.
Thank you. So the path of initiation, absolute rigor. Now, these are the things that Pluto brings to us. They're very exacting and relentless, but they're bringing us deeper and deeper. So again, please, Radlina.
As from the Sun is also a star, a very interesting book about the 3 transpersonal planets by Rudyard. And the quote is, the most fundamental meaning of all plutonian processes is that they force us, often relentlessly, to devaluate or abandon all that is a manifestation of surface living and to plumb as profound a depth of human experience as our mental, affective, and spiritual condition can withstand.
Thank you. Yes, plumbing the depths, getting beyond the surface.
The function of astrology is the next one. While astronomy seeks to establish the existence of order in celestial phenomena, astrology's function is to transform this observed order into a myth, that is, into a series of consistently interrelated symbols able to give a vivid and experienceable direction to the slow and always uncertain process of individuals and societies towards an ever fuller actualization of the potential inherent in man as an archetypal reality.
So this notion of astrology's function being to transform astronomical data into myth, I think that's really a concept that we need to hold in mind as we work, because we're creating myth as we go. Every time we work with a birth chart, we're myth making in that sense. Now, I was aware of that years ago. This book came out in, I think, 1975. The Sun is also a star.
The great astrological New Age myth is the galaxy myth. Galactic space pervades every cell of every human being's body. We all are as much galactic beings as fishes are organizations of seawater. Yet we do not normally realize this so. We need a new powerful myth to entice our minds into vividly indisputably, unforgettably experiencing that fact.
Thank you. It's such an important fact, and it's one that is coming more and more into view through this galactic dimension of astrology. You know, we really don't need to we don't go out there to get into deep space. We are deep space. We just have to recognize that.
Okay, the next one is from Triptych, another book from Roger, and it says, "We should look again in the sky for some great faith, and indeed our yearning to move in gravitation-free spaces is a subconscious attempt to forget the Earth's warring dualities and to participate in the ordered grandeur of the pageant of planets and stars. Soon we may feel that if the Earth, Terra, is our home, the solar system is our village community. Then some more adventurous minds will begin to dream of the unknown paths that will lead from our solar system to some other cosmic community, and eventually to the great metropolis, the white city at the core of the galaxy."
Thank you. So here's Roger in 1968, evoking the galactic center, the core of the galaxy, the white city. So the outer planets are, in fact, a process, an essentialization process. And it all begins with Uranus.
Yeah. Would you like me to read that one as well?
Yes, please.
That's a slightly longer one. Bear with me. In the life of an individual struck by Uranian releases of galactic power, Neptune refers to the eruption of until then unconscious or repressed ideas and impulses invading his consciousness, and in some instances causing an ecstatic state. The individual is thrown out of his normal cultural rational state of mind by the Uranus impact, and he finds himself in a totally unfamiliar, perhaps frightening, perhaps exhilarating psychic condition. In this state, his sense of being I and only I tends to dissolve into what he may interpret as cosmic consciousness. He seems to have reached the unitive state, of which great mystics have spoken allegorically, or at least a high peak experience, such as the psychologist Maslow described. The experience, unfortunately, does not last, and the individual usually finds himself once more sitting, perhaps bewildered and doubting his sanity, within the familiar Saturnian ego fortress. It is what happens then, how he interprets or realizes in depth the meaning of the transcendent experience, which gives it a constructive or temporarily destructive character. If the individual consciousness can assimilate the contents of the experience and consciously or not does not fear its reappearance, the experience should be eminently constructive. It can only be so if what it reveals can be referred to a philosophical worldview or religious teaching, enabling the individual to accept the possibility that this revelatory experience is part of a legitimate process of spiritual unfoldment. If the experience is understood to fit in a scheme, which, even if unusual in terms of the lives of ordinary people, can be endowed with basic meaning and perhaps with great value, then it can be interpreted as, and therefore it becomes, a step on the path of self-transformation. For this reason, as modern man is caught in a whirlpool of radically transformative forces, a frame of reference within which these forces can be given a constructive meaning is very much needed. It is in answer to such a need that this book has been written. The sun is also a star by Dane Rodier.
Thank you. Now, I experienced this, what Rudyard describes initially here, the sudden throwing into a context that I was unfamiliar with. And I'll be forever grateful for Rudyard's guidance in helping me to integrate that experience. I came in 1970, and I encountered his work in 1972. And it was a very significant turning point for me. The moment I picked up his book, The Lunation Cycle, I knew it was going to help me in a major way. And it certainly did. It helped me to bring my experience into the context of, what he called here a philosophical frame of reference. So I saw it as a legitimate step on the path of self-transformation. I had an elder able to contextualize that for me. That was the book, and just the graphics alone spoke to me. This whole notion of resonance and of subtle energy and all of that. To this day, I consider this to be probably the most significant of Rudyard's works, because it goes right to the core of cyclicity, which is what he brought back to astrology. So with the inspiration I received from Rudyard around the lunation cycle, I intuitively, instinctually established for myself a journaling tool, which I call the Lunation Journal. Now, it basically meant that I was simply attuning to the ongoing lunation cycle journey. So from a new moon to first quarter, full moon, I was consistently conscious of those turning points, and I was journaling along the way. And when I encountered this Egyptian image, it really spoke to me, because that, to me, is what this lunation journaling process has been like. It's been a step-by-step ascent. And at a significant a point in that process, there is an opening to a much broader realm of consciousness. And to me, it's all contained in that Egyptian image, from left to right, the gradual ascent, and then the encounter with some kind of overarching, transcendent entity or consciousness. For me, that came in 1986, right? And I write about that elsewhere. What it did was, bring me into this notion, or into a place of synthesis, where working with Rudyard's, not just the lunation cycle, but all of his teachings, of course, and also with the teachings that came through Jose Arguelles. And if some of you already know, the two of them were very good friends back in the 70s. In fact, Rudyard sought out Arguelles because he saw in him the presence of an avatar. He was exhibiting the characteristics of an avataric presence that Rudyard had envisioned years prior. And they became very good friends, and Jose went on to bring through a very significant body of wisdom teachings, and was also active in the outer world through ceremony, and especially for the 1987 event Harmonic Convergence. So my work has integrated their work into a work of synthesis, and the image on the left evokes that. At the very top, we have the symbol for galactic center, that the Maya consciously used, for centuries. They were onto this whole galactic center business from a very long time ago up to the present. Now, there's something novel here, however, in that it has been my discovery that there's a lunation cycle, a Mayan calendar connection that has been previously unseen. 200, the Mayan calendar has the Solking has a grid of 260 symbols, numbers and symbols. 260 moon cycles equates to 21 years. 21 years is exactly 1/4 of the orbit of Uranus. So what we have here is a Uranian invention, we'll say, in terms of myth making, where we're using astrology to enter this Uranian realm of transformation. And there is symbolic guidance there if we are open to receiving it. And that's what I've been working on for the last few decades, is assembling a new myth with new symbology, new old symbology, and bringing it all together into a synthesis. And that's what I've been calling the lightning path. And it's a whole lot of it is out there at lightningpath.net, my website. And coming up in early next year, I'm intending to lead a workshop over a multi-week duration that will reveal the ins and outs of the lightning path. So you may want to stay in touch and be a part of that. It will be based on this manuscript, which some of you have received already, but it's a 400-page PDF that really encompasses the whole of my experience of the lightning path. And that's what I'm preparing to release here next year. So once again, Radlina, thank you for the exposure and the opportunity to share.
You're always welcome. Your presentations are always very interesting, very well prepared, and fully in line with what I also study and try to put out for people, mostly the work of Dan Woodger, but we are seeing also that you're making your own Uranian steps in another direction, which is very inventive, very Aquarian. You're an Aquarius sun opposite Pluto, and I think this opposition of Pluto is not totally not part of this, if you see what I mean. I think that's an activation of a Uranian force on the other side, which makes it interested in delving in deeper into things the way you have. So also it was interesting for me to note that your Pluto is conjunct Ceres, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Them two are opposite the sun, and Ceres in mythology participates in that myth of the abduction of Persephone, the daughter of Ceres, or Demetra, the other name, by Hades, Pluto, in the underground. So immediately I thought, in your case, somehow this myth, this story, something related, I don't know, could be involved, because you have the nurturing principle, a very earthly by its nature, Ceres, together with Pluto, and they are opposite the sun. So maybe something to look at if you're interested. But I thought that's interesting.
Like to make a comment.
Yes, Bevan.
I think it's still really odd, Dwayne, that you and I have this connection through Jose and Rudyard, where I met Rudyard at Jose's house, and that Jose and I were such good friends, and that he took me to not only to see in Boulder where plutonium was being produced, but also to the New Mexico sites. And I'm sitting here before even this started with a little book I picked up at Vintage Book with a big picture on the front of the Mayan calendar. And it's sitting by the computer before we started this.
Hold it
event.
up again, please. I'd like to see that.
Can
Oh,
you
wow.
see it?
Wow.
Can you? And
Fabulous.
it's full of it. It's
Can't see it because
Oh.
Dwayne's
Go a bit higher, Raven. A little bit higher. Yes, perfect.
I cannot see it because I still have
Dwayne, maybe if you want to stop the share of your screen so we can see Raven's screen a bit bigger. Perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You just need to press on stop share or something like that. Yeah, perfect.
There we go.
That's it.
Thank you.
Here we go.
So I see the author's Jeff Stray.
Yes,
And,
it's not Jose's book. It's
no.
just, yeah. Go
But
ahead.
Jeff had the most amazing website prior to 2012. He assembled data from all over the world about what was coming down, and it was just incredible. So I'm sure the book is very comprehensive.
Yeah, I just got it in an old bookstore. So I just saw it on the shelf and just got it.
And I have to join in that I have been obsessed, so to speak, and lived many years following the Mayan calendar. Neither did I meet Dane Ridger or Jose Arguelles, but I became associated with people that's what we did. And we had parties and this and that and followed it completely. And I became very aware of this and that about it. So, and I traveled all through the Maya land also, and went even to the place that's on the top on that, and all through there, down the tomb of, I think Pascal Voltal. And
yeah.
I know, yeah, and there were only 10 of us allowed in, and it was
Wow.
so it's made a huge impact in my life. It's been a big part of my life as well.
So it's not a coincidence you all are here.
Seems to be a very Uranian Pluto experience between all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yes, lots of synchronicities, and I
Yes.
wanted to just maybe looking at the time, we are at the end of the standard time, but I suggest we leave it a bit longer, maybe 15 minutes, because let's look at one chart at least. I wanted to show Janet's chart as an illustration of everything that we discussed so far. And feel free to also apply other things related to what Dwayne just presented in your comments on the chart. Yeah, but concentrating on Pluto mostly, isn't it? As that's our topic today.
Yes.
Okay, just one chart so that we can have an example, and then I'll let you go after that. Is it okay?
Good.
All right. So yeah, Janet, I just wanted to ask you first, just if this is correct.
I think so.
Okay, maybe a little bit different because I use my own system called Richard Montanus. Maybe you don't use that one for calculating, but in general, the date is the same and everything is the same, the time.
I think so. I can't see it very well, but it looks very similar to the one I've got, yes.
Perfect.
Thanks, yeah.
And I don't know if you consider yourself Sagittarius ascendant or Capricorn ascendant, but
just Sagittarius, I think, yeah.
Sagittarius, right?
I don't actually know my exact birth time, but I've kind of calculated it using intuition and different things, and trying to count back, you know, to various events and rationale. So it's been, and I knew that I was born, I knew that everything was over by the time the sun came up, I was told. So
Well, you definitely have the Jupiter on the Jupiter in its own sign on the ascendant, whatever it is, the ascendant. So that's already such a big accent on Jupiter. But let's look at Pluto, as that's what we're talking about, isn't it? I found your chart very interesting because not only you've got lots of Plutonian energies in the chart, but you also have lots of things going on with Pluto right now. It goes both ways. So you are part of the Pluto in Virgo generation, as some of the others here are too. And excuse me, got Moon in Scorpio, conjunct Neptune. That's already quite Plutonian, and they square Pluto. Is that right? The other planet which is related to the rulership of Scorpio. We have Sun opposite Pluto, like with Dwayne's case. Sun in Aquarius. Well, are you from pretty much the same gender? Maybe. So no, you are younger, Janet. So yeah, that's not why you've got the opposition. It's a different situation. But Chiron is also opposite Pluto. And most importantly, I think the moon sextile Pluto aspect. It's not that obvious from the chart, but if you look at the table, it's a 0-degree aspect. So this moon is extremely Plutonian, probably in a very positive way. But it not only it's moon in Scorpio, but it's also sextile Pluto. So already we can see lots of things related to that energy. And I'm not sure if the houses are correctly distributed if you don't have your exact time of birth. So we can only speculate whether Pluto is in the 8th house on top of everything else, together with Uranus and the North Node. So these are all very important things pointing in that direction. We can expect it's very heavy for you, especially with the moon in Scorpio. I've got it too. Mine is not conjunct Neptune, is sextile. Oh no, actually it's not even sextile Neptune, but I feel like your case is even harder emotionally in a way. And I've got Pluto currently. I'm sorry I can't show the transits. It's just my computer here doesn't allow me to manipulate the software live the way I want. But by transit, Pluto at the end of Capricorn, at the moment is conjunct your Mars-Venus exact conjunction that you have in the chart. So here is what I'm talking about. Very close, it's approaching it. Pluto is 24, they're 26. And at the same time, it's trine the nodes. Well, basically we see in the chart what are Mars and Venus doing, and whatever they're doing in aspects to other planets, that's what Pluto is now doing to your planets as well. So a lot going on, and if you want to tell us something about your chart or ask any question, how do you feel in this whole situation?
I do feel very Plutonian. I feel a mix of Plutonian and Neptunian, largely. But then I have Uranus, you know, wildly opposing my Sun Chiron as well. So that's quite strong, it being in Leo. I don't really know. I mean, I've gone through lots and lots of very difficult times in my life, and again now, I was interested in when you said about the letting go. I can't remember how you put it, but the letting go aspect.
Yeah.
And I would say with a fixed sun and a fixed moon, I find that extremely difficult. So there's always been that conflict in my life. I've always found loss extremely painfully emotional. And I'm still learning how to deal with that. I don't know whether I do deal with it very well. And I'm still trying to understand really what Pluto is doing with my Mars and Venus, to be honest. I mean, I've been studying astrology, you know, from such a young age, but I never feel as if I really know very much, but I try. I'm not very good at explaining, but
No
but I
worries.
know. But
Enough to see
I,
example.
it takes me a long time to integrate and absorb new things. I kind of get them on a very flashlight Aquarian intuitive, but then I have to digest them as well, and that takes me a long time. I don't know whether that's to do with
Most likely. And
to having to take it right the way inside, you know, into the dark of the soul. But yeah, I feel as if I'm forever on that. I say Inanna, you say Persephone, I say Inanna, what is the goddess that kind of speaks to me, and I feel as if I'm forever doing that journey, and I have one day where it's okay, and then down through it again. I'd love a rest, but that's how it feels. That's how
so
my life.
fluctuating, isn't it? The moon in Scorpio is one of those very fluctuating moods, one very difficult to control over time and stabilize yourself in a way. I totally am with you on this. But your case is really interesting for other reasons as well. And maybe others can comment. I mean, guys, feel free. I wanted to point you out to something here as an illustration to the transits and everything. So, Janet, when you were born, it was in the 8th house, starting the journey from here. And if we follow it along the path, we can see that when you were relatively young and definitely in the first part of life, Pluto crossed the, transiting Pluto was over the North Node, and then at some point you had it cross your MC where the moon is with Neptune. So this must have been, I haven't calculated when, what year that was, to ask you if you went through something extremely hard, maybe family related or something like that. And then in the 90s, when Pluto, well, maybe late 90s, early 2000s, something like that, no, that's 2008 when Pluto went from Sagittarius to Capricorn. And roughly around that time, you must have experienced it cross your ascendant. The other reason I chose your chart is we have two angles crossed during your life. And it must have been really difficult because, especially now that it's on the Mars and Venus, at the same time we can see it square the moon. So whatever is going on now may be a throwback, a reference back to whatever happened or were the issues when Pluto was over the moon years ago. So I guess that's something worth looking at.
And it might help me perhaps again readjust or confirm my birth time to work those things out.
Exactly.
You know,
Yes, that's a very good point actually, because Pluto being so slow is a good instrument to make a chart exact. Yeah.
Very. I will definitely look at and there's so many, but look at the most traumatic times. And I have kept a diary in the past. I've been a bit lax to it, but I did used to keep quite a detailed diary, so I should be able to have
track
a look
these
at.
things back. Maybe at the moment it's a very right time to do this, and that's why you were kind of attracted to exploring this topic again, because it's definitely time. It says Pluto on the Mars-Venus conjunction. This Mars-Venus conjunction is very active. You see how many aspects it is making to other things in the chart, and also it's in the first house, which is part of this overcoming or rediscovering yourself in one way or another.
And it's the Aries house as well, with the full moon in Aries. You know, definitely something.
Oh yes, that's another very good point. It happened right here on your MCIC axis, almost, and both of them, Sun and Moon, at the moment squaring your Mars, Venus, and Pluto. By the way, today, I don't know if you guys have checked, but today we have an exact square between Mars and Pluto in the sky. Yeah. So your Mars is basically where the Pluto is, Janet, but kind of switched places.
That's interesting because I feel I'm meant to be definitely moving and acting and moving forward, and I can't. I'm completely stuck in the dark, in stasis. and I don't know quite what is going to, move me, turn that key, turn that stuckness into moving forward. It's something about feeling that book. I can't remember who wrote it, but feel the fear and do it anyway. And fear is, to me, tied up a little bit with Pluto, but there's a transforming side to that as well.
You see, also another interesting thing is that not too long ago, you had the trine of Pluto to its natal position. That third stage that people experience in the 50s, 60s, we mentioned before, exactly what you're talking about, this opportunity to get out of the feeling of futility or the feeling of like totally uninspired to continue forward, maybe because of what is happening, maybe because of tiredness of all the challenges that have been accumulating. And that's really the trick with this aspect, whether to open up again to new life in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess
I would like to just say that to address you personally and just say, yes, take a step, start taking the step. I just myself went through that, the agony of not even taking a step. And I said, okay, I can open the door to change, just a little step, one step, and not feel the huge overwhelm of all the steps that would ensue if I went in for me, the idea of lightening up and moving, but I was allowed to explore by a step. I also have Mars and Venus conjunct each other. So I look at Mars being the doer, like I used to take my name and say Prince Pomerantz is helping Lady Lauren, and those are the two that I could work with myself.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Can I also come in, please?
Of course, Simone.
Having had my and still have the Pluto transit in my 4th house, having had it since 2008, that one thing in terms of stuckness, which I have found helpful with Pluto, is if you think of a piece of music, of like a symphony. That there are times in the piece of music where you have the silence, and but that actually is part of the whole music, and the stuckness to me on a Pluto level is just like that. Stuckness is part of the piece of music, so it is actually a movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you think about your stuckness as a movement, even though it's kind of gone down into the unconscious, and trust it, maybe that, I don't know, could help. That's the way I've been working through that. I've had a lot of pieces of moments of stuckness. Anyway, there you go.
Thank you. Thank you. A chord of pause. Yeah, lovely.
That's a very, very good comparison. I love that, Simona. Very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Will you be able to look at mine briefly when we're through?
Yes, we're about to finish for today, but maybe we can do another 5 minutes, no problem. I have them all, so I never know which one will come up and how, but we can go in the way. Just let me change the screen. Yes, Raven, I regret we don't have more time because it's another extremely relevant case, yours. And I don't know if you want me to comment myself or you want to say.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do, Radalina.
Well,
go ahead.
Do you guys see now the changed chart?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, I think it speaks for itself with this massive triangle in the middle that is so obvious, pointing towards Pluto, conjunct Chiron on the descendant, angular Pluto, Chiron there. It is already assuming hardship in relationships. And all through the moment Pluto starts its journey from the descendant all the way to the Scorpio planets on the top, so many of them. Another Venus-Mars conjunction in Scorpio, and Moon in Scorpio, very similar to Janet's case. But here, even more pressure, even more tension. I guess here in your case, Raven, the pressure was more social, because the oppositions to the Scorpio planets and those ones that create the tension that then comes out from Pluto are Jupiter and Saturn, right at the bottom. So I guess the key there is the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction, which is opposite the Scorpio planets, and all of them together are square to Pluto. So Pluto is like an expression point. Maybe you were not that much Plutonian throughout your life as much as other people were or circumstances were, and they were expressions out there of what this pressure in the opposition was creating. And
But
so
Pluto, the Pluto is opposite now.
yes,
The Pluto
almost,
in
yeah,
my birth chart.
almost. That's why your case is so interesting, because your Pluto is in Leo, in the beginning of Leo, and not only it's going to be, this is even more special, because not only is it shortly going to be opposite itself, but also cross the ascendant. So that's a very, very, everything here, you see this square, the red square, so symmetrical, so beautiful, as a perfect geometry in your chart. Everything will be activated, the whole chart.
Yes, exactly.
When
Exactly.
Pluto crosses the ascendant.
And
So
it's and the rising sign is 28 degrees of Capricorn. So it's really very close to
I
that
see.
degree.
I don't know why I thought it's Aquarius in the beginning of Aquarius.
Nope, because
Nope.
it was going back and forth the at that time.
Yeah, you
the
just looked to me.
Capricorn.
Yeah, it's just my personal impression was that it's Aquarius, but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, that thing is not so easy to determine. But you are the boundary. So we are another thing is that being at the boundary, you know how sensitive those moments between changing signs are. And your aspects happen not just with the squares, the opposition and everything, but also when there is a transition between two signs of Pluto.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
very intense.
So I just bring this one thing up, that I've had fears of going to doctors, and that's 6th house, not really 7th, but I should go. And it's been for 2 or 3 years that I've avoided them. So I have a kind of fear of that right now.
We saw that Pluto doesn't like avoidance of problems, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have to face it squarely, if I can use that expression.
Yes, perfect pun.
And I'm sure it's going to be all right. There is more chance for that to be all right if you face it squarely, considering the aspects. If you don't, then if you don't.
Okay. That's
don't take my word for it. It's just a
no,
feeling.
I hope it doesn't matter at this point.
I went to the doctor because
it's still gonna happen, you know.
Yeah.
Can I come in with that? Because there again, I have found a very helpful kind of way of thinking of that. With Pluto, there is something about not leaving any stone unturned.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm working on that, whatever it's better to catch. Yeah, that's how I found. So kind of a good way of kind of thinking about it.
Yes. Very good point.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I hope it was an interesting mixture today of different things.
And what is our next topic, Rodolina?
Don't know. I have no idea. Well, I have an idea, but you tell me
Cats.
first. You know, we did this starting from Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. And we missed Jupiter because Jupiter's cycle is not, it's pretty fast. Yes, we can explore that too, and I find it very interesting. The other option is to go towards Chiron again, which we've done in the past, but not in this setting.
I would love to do Jupiter.
Me too.
Actually, I was on the wavelength of Jupiter, and I really liked Janet's chart, Jupiter on the ascendant in Sagittarius. And this is, I took it as a sign that maybe next topic should be Jupiter. I've been thinking about Jupiter this week a lot with no reason. So, okay, let's make a turn.
But didn't Jupiter just go out of retrograde
Yes, another thing.
this week?
Lots of them.
Or 2 days
Lots
ago,
of them.
whenever it was?
Yeah, at the moment we are in a period of time when lots of the planets are getting out of retrograde. But yeah, another reason why it's interesting. And I think we sometimes confuse so many Jupiterian things with Neptunian ones. And it probably will be interesting to make that distinction next time. What really out there in society is Jupiterian and what is Neptunian? Because it's not very clear. You know how the two blend a little bit, because in the past, Pisces was ruled by Jupiter before they discovered Neptune. And it's to this day, the two are very connected. Their cycle together is also very in lockstep. I don't know if you've explored this.
Also, I just listened to a talk this week. Christopher Renstrom is the person about Jupiter. And he mentioned something I thought about, which is that Jupiter gets, you know, people are always drawn to the doom and gloom, the Plutos, the, you know, the Saturns and everything. But how about Jupiter, the good news? It's hard to get a paper that's called good news.
But the thing is that Jupiter is not always good news.
I know,
Another thing that people are usually missing. So
it can be opportunity.
Yeah, it is. It is always like all of them.
And it's the growing. It's the growing of something. So I look at it as the planets go. I look when Jupiter's about to cross my, I think my ascendant, right? It's at 22 now, Jupiter.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm interested, especially in Jupiter.
Yes, it's very interesting. It's very interesting, and I would only say one word. It's expansion. With Jupiter, it's expansion within the boundaries of Saturn. Yeah. We can expand as much as we want, but as long as we stay within Saturn.
That's right.
And that's the main difference between Jupiter and all the others that we were looking at in the last 2 months. They're different. They're totally beyond everything. So let's go back to Earth, back to the solar system, and we will look at Jupiter next time. And
can I make a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
Has anybody, have you, Radlina, or anybody used this book?
No, never.
Does anybody know anything about it?
The name of the author is vaguely familiar, but no.
Somebody recommended it, and it looks like this all through. I can't even imagine what to do with it.
Most of the information is online nowadays. I find it's easier, isn't it? Maybe this book is great. Maybe it's a good reference, but
no idea.
Yeah, usually when you type the cycle of whatever, it gives you all the dates, and it saves you so much time. Laura?
When you talk about Jupiter, you're correlating with Saturn too. And like right now in the night sky, we can see Saturn and Jupiter. So what next time when you talk about Jupiter, are you going to talk about Saturn then too, that combination that's been in the sky?
They always come together, even if they're not in the same place in the sky at the moment. You can never really speak about one without having in mind the other. They counterbalance each other. It's very interesting. And in a different kind of way than Saturn with Uranus. So it's worth it, giving it a bit of attention, because as Stephen Arroyo has a book dedicated to Jupiter. I don't know if you know it. And he was saying there that what's going on, he says, I mean, it's a long time ago, but he says, nobody wants to speak about Jupiter. Nobody wants to write about it. There is no information. So I felt like, he says, I needed to step in and write a book about it. And it's a very interesting, full of examples, full of everyday life examples book. It is for Bulgarians. It is in Bulgaria. It's published. It's translated, just to say.
So it's Stephen Arroyo named Jupiter is the name of the book?
Yeah, Jupiter. I think only that, Jupiter. Maybe there is an underwriting something, but not important.
Yes, I've got that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
And would you recommend it?
Oh, yeah.
I would. Anything from Stephen Arroyo.
I
Yes.
have one or two
Got
of
8
his
books. They are all
Anything.
brilliant.
Yeah, he's brilliant. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. And
Thank you.
hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Radalina.
Thank you, Radalina. You're
Thanks,
marvelous.
everyone.
Leading the charge, and Dwayne too today. That was
Thank
really
you,
nice.
Dwayne,
Thank you,
and everyone
Dwayne.
else.
Love you guys.
See you soon.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Thanks,
Have a great couple
everybody.
weeks.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.